First up, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I know that I'm very excited to speak to you. I'm sure everybody else here is very excited to hear from you and what we can learn from you today. I suppose we'll dive straight into it. So starting at the beginning, I've already mentioned your very successful rugby career. I think some other people in the audience surely may know of, there's a photo of you like hoisting the trophy over your head with blood on your face as you, of course, captained the All Blacks into winning World Cup. I suppose my first question is, when it comes to leading a team to such great heights, are there any leadership qualities that you developed as captain that maybe you still carry with you today?
Yes, I do think there are quite a few characteristics that you need to have as a successful sports captain that carry on over into not only leading in a commercial or a business sense, but just generally in your life. Because you don't have to be in a particular position with a particular title attached to you to be a leader, to actually make a difference in other people's lives by being prepared to take the lead, take risks, do the work necessary to know what to do. But I think one of the things I think it's always important, obviously, to have clear goals, and teams like the All Blacks clearly had a clear vision about who we are, who we have been for 130 years, and that is the best rugby team in the world. And that's a burden you carry in a way, because you've got to live up to that legacy. But understanding that that's what the legacy is, and if you want to sign up, if you want to be an All Black, you have to be strong enough. You have to sign up to playing in the best team in the world and making sure that when you step out of the jersey, because there's a real feeling in New Zealand rugby that, and it's funny when you walk in the changing room before a test match, all the jerseys are lined up around the wall. They're all and it's always the number facing towards you. And as you go in there's that black jersey with the number on it, and my number was number 9. And I'd see that number, and every time I walked into the changing room, wherever it was in the world or across New Zealand, to play a test match, when I saw that number, I wouldn't think, oh, that's great, I'm going to get that jersey on and go out and play. And I would think, wow, I can think of all my childhood heroes who wore that jersey. And I think of Sid Going and Chris Laidlaw and Dave Loveridge and Mark Donaldson, pick names that you wouldn't know at all, but they were my childhood heroes from ages of 13 or 14 or 15. And the thought that I'd come through the ranks, and I'm going to put that jersey on and go out and represent New Zealand, represent the All Blacks, was for me, like, every time, it was just it's sort of a thrill, but it's actually not at that point. It's like scary. It's like, God, we've got to win. and I've got to play well and keep my place in the team. And so that feeling is generalised in the All Blacks, and has always been and continues to be the feeling that you don't own the jersey. It's not your jersey. You have the right to play in that jersey, and your job is to pass it on to the next person who plays in that jersey in a better place, or as good a place as it is. And that meaning you need to play well, and you need to play in teams that win. And so the All Black legacy goes on long after you've stepped out of the jersey. Which is why most teams in the world, the Lions did, and most other teams in the world have put the name of the player on their jersey these days, and certainly non-rugby teams do. I don't think the All Blacks will ever do that, and I'm currently and will cost us money, because no player owns the jersey. No player has a right to say, that's my jersey, that's my number. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure commercially to put it on, but I'm currently the chairman and I'm from the old school. So I get to say. So I don't think it'll happen while I'm there. So I think that was really, and I won't go on to list other things in terms of the leadership traits and characteristics, but that vision, that sense of belonging, that being part of a team that really matters to you is just as important for the leader to be able to demonstrate that and to rally the team around that as anything else. So that's one example.
Yeah, thank you for that. I suppose my next question is, you're touching a lot on the idea of like legacy and culture, and I think a very sort of self-sacrificial idea of being in a team to then work together to something bigger. whether in your time in rugby or even generalized into a business context, is there anything that you can either maybe things you've done or can point to at fostering sort of a culture and a dynamic of really facilitating that kind of excellence?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is you can't do anything on your own, really, in the end. I mean, you can play golf on your own, and you can get a good score, and you can feel good about yourself. But in business and in life and in sport, definitely, it's all a team game. And so it's so much of it is about how you fit into the team, how you work with the team, how you help the team succeed. And if you're the captain, it's often about, funnily enough, you say, oh, the captain, it's about leading the team, giving the team talks and making all the decisions and all that sort of thing. It actually isn't. It's about recognising the capability and skill in the team. This is talking about really high quality, top best in the world type teams, and making sure that the environment is such that each of the players, because everyone's different, everyone's got their own way of preparing, everyone's got their own things that help them play better, making sure that there are the impediments to players not performing to their ability are removed. So it's not about being like the things that you do, it's almost like the things that you don't do. You get out of the way of players who actually know what they're doing, are very focused, don't want to be told, and just don't get in the way. So a lot of really good leadership at the very top level is about getting out of the way, creating the environment, but then letting people do what they can do. And you see that in lots of great teams. You see it in captains are there, they're facilitators, make a few important decisions on the field, but basically facilitators and encouragers and focusers of what we want to be doing at this particular time in the game.
I suppose back to your progression for a bit. You retired from professional rugby at 26, so fairly soon after that victory, and transitioned to studying philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford. First of all, a very unique move, not only from a rugby background, but also your experience in education before that in medicine. So I suppose first up, what inspired the shift? But secondly, I've just come off PP at Oxford myself, and I know that it's a place full of just really opportunities to learn from really incredible people, whether it's professors or your fellow peers. I was wondering if, interacting in that kind of environment, whether it's the studies or the people or whatever your experience was, has helped shape your approach to leadership or taught you anything about what it means to lead.
Okay, there's a couple of questions there. You have to remind me. Get me back on track if
no worries at all.
But firstly, my retirement. You mentioned I did retire. I was 26. The World Cup was in 20th of June, 1987. Remember the day. And then there was only one more test match I had to play, which was one more I had the opportunity to play, which was 1 month later, about a month, 6 weeks later, and it was over here. It was in Sydney against the Wallabies. Because I had captained the All Blacks, the last time the Wallabies lost on Eden Park, 1986, I was the captain. So and we lost the Bledisloe Cup. That was the third of a 3-test series, and the only other time we'd lost the Bledisloe Cup in a test series in New Zealand, played in New Zealand, was in 1949, when the All Blacks were already top 30 were touring in South Africa. So I guess you could let the 1949 team off. But you couldn't let the 1986 team off because we lost fair and square to a very talented Wallabies team. But in any event, my last test match was over here in Sydney, and the mission was to get the Bledisloe Cup back. And we did succeed in doing that, so I could end on a happy note. It was funny because in those days rugby was amateur, so you had to work, and I'd been a student most of the time. I was working in Auckland hospitals as a junior doctor when I was playing rugby. And I had to take time off at times to be able to fit in the tours and things. But I had a choice. I had a Rhodes Scholarship. I deferred it for 2 years. I had to either stay and continue playing for the All Blacks, and it was a great All Black team. That All Black team that won the World Cup in '87, we didn't lose a game in '87, and then I left. And then this is a good thing to remember as well. '88 and '89, they didn't lose a game. So it was not. I couldn't say, in 1987 I was part of the All Black winning team. They needed me to win the games. As soon as I left, they kept winning for 2 years. So, but the real point is that was a great All Black team. And you go through these eras, and Richie McCaw obviously led a great All Black team through a period as well. But that also was a great All Black team, and I did regret not having the opportunity to play for longer with that team. But you had to make a choice, and the choice I made was to go on with my studies and career and effectively working life. And the reason I did a PPE for philosophy, politics, and economics was I had actually been doing sciences as a doctor and at school. You're sort of doing sciences as you lead up to the final exams, and then you go off to university and you do science, and then you do medicine, and then you're practicing medicine. I just felt like I was uneducated in some ways. There was a whole bunch of information that I didn't know. And because I had this scholarship and it was going to one of the great universities in the world, particularly for humanities, I thought I would take some time out and just take a break. And then I'd no doubt end up back in medicine. But I didn't. I stayed on, and partly because I didn't want to go back to New Zealand after only 2.5 years. I wanted to stay in London or the UK, away from New Zealand, away from the crucible of rugby that you're in. And so I stayed in the UK and worked for a management consulting company and stayed in business ever since, apart from 4 years working for the Prime Minister in his office in Wellington.
And I suppose from that experience and from doing that sort of very dramatic shift, what are the biggest takeaways and biggest learnings you got from, as you said, sort of broadening your education to learn more about the world?
Yeah, I think you learn. For me, learning's it's like if I was to have a sort of motto in life, it would be like something like through learning life. Your life grows from what you learn, and that's obviously taking learning in its broadest possible sense. There's a practical learning. You need things to be able to get a job and get on in life, and you need to learn to drive if you want to do things. There's lots of practical things you've got to learn to be able to do. But there's also learning your place in the world, who you are and what you want to do and what's important to you and what matters to you. And for most people, that's obviously family and their experiences with their own family. But it's also, for a lot of people, it's cultural connections and it's national connections. They come from a certain place in the world. Learning those things and owning those things and being those things is what builds you into the person you are and creates something that I think is very important in leadership in particular, which is authenticity, being yourself. And you have to really know yourself in order to be yourself, because in order to be yourself, you have to get out of the way of yourself often. Often if you can just naturally be yourself by knowing what's important to you, you'll make decisions which are consistent with being true to who you are as a person. So I think that whole authenticity comes from learning generally. And the learning I did in that degree, which was unrelated to my previous degree, was more just, again, I would say I just had a broader grasp of the whole world, of what goes on, whether it's politics or it's economics or it's interpersonal relations or it's the capacity to engage with people from all sorts of different types and walks of life. And I think that served me really well in everything I've done since, because when I've been involved in being a leader or in any kind of endeavour, whether it's in business or a not-for-profit, understanding and being very like not in any way trying to impose things on other people, listening to people and being able to help them in a way, move in the direction that you think is the right direction. So that, and I'm not really putting that the way I want to, but it's somehow just being able to, I don't know, and just engage with people in a way which is really warming and but also inspirational for them and for you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's very profound of you, actually. On to sort of, okay, after Oxford, we go to management consultancy and end up sort of being, CEO of a few major listed corporations. It's even connecting with this authenticity. Obviously, once you get to being CEO or very high up, you're dealing with things on a much larger scale and with a lot more people than maybe you did in other roles in the past. How do you sort of maintain those ideas of authenticity or even other leadership skills when you're suddenly having to lead from the top down and dealing with just many more people than you were before?
Well, in all the things I've done, I've never taken on the trappings of office, as it were. I've always been like this kid that grew up in Palmerston North, which is a 55,000 people town in regional New Zealand, which I love growing up there, and I love going back there and seeing people, and people call it like the boringest place in New Zealand, but it isn't, of course, if you know people there and you grew up there and it's part of who you are. And my parents still live there in the same house that they moved into in 1963. And so when I go back and see them, I sort of go back and it's nothing different from the house I grew up in. So, and I've always been like that, and I think the All Blacks teaches you humility as well. And New Zealanders, we're a long way away, and we don't have it's not a big, powerful country. So, you have to be pretty modest about where you come from to some extent, which leads you to just want to prove yourself by achievement, not by like, oh, this person's got a title, or this person's came from a certain area or went to a certain university, therefore they can be considered to be at this level. It's all about achievement and what you do and what you deliver in the end. And that's what's the reason that's actually not being altruistic, because you actually feel a lot better about yourself when you feel like I've contributed this, I've achieved this, and it makes you feel like I've made a contribution and delivered for other people, rather than, oh, I've got this big title and I'm the chief executive of Fairfax Media, which is the biggest media company in this part of the world. It's just like, for me, that just has always been just like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me what the title is.
Yeah, thank you for that. These days, you co-founded Baylor Technology Investments, investor in growth stage tech companies. So obviously dealing with a lot of founders and a lot of people who are trying to scale their business. I know that in the Imagine community, we have a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders who are also trying to look at the same sort of growth. What leadership advice might you have, and what qualities do you look for in founders who are able to scale their companies successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very lucky to be at this stage of my life and to have been able to start a successful company. It's still a relatively small company. It was listed on the ASX, about 300 million under management. So we're getting there. We started at zero. But the great thing for me is that what we do every day is help people fulfill their dream of what they wanted to do. They have this dream of building a technology company. They've done a lot of the work already by the time we get involved, because we invest at the growth stage. So the company would typically have at least $10 million worth of revenue and be growing pretty fast, but they're looking for 10 to 20 million in the first check, and we can follow on and help them. We keep a pretty small portfolio, just between 10 and 12 companies, so we can be closely involved. So, it's just a joy to be able to help people and keep them on the right track to deliver on what they're trying to do. But back to what you're looking for, or back to what you invariably see, you see people who have got a really clear idea in their mind about what they want to do. They've got this vision about what can be done. There's a gap in the market, or no one's ever done something before, or they realise that something's being done in a very inefficient legacy way, and they can do it digitally much better. So they've got this vision which drives them on and on to do it. And the two things that they have to be able to do, and normally often there's a partner, because you can't do both, and people aren't often suited to both. One is the technology. You have to be able to build the technology to deliver on the functionality and the things that will deliver the outcomes that you're looking for. And secondly, you need to be able to sell it. And often the people that can envision the technology and envision what's called the product market fit, the technology product that solves a market problem, are not actually very good at selling stuff. So they need to have a partner who can sell. So those are the two biggest and most important skills that you need to have. But as time goes on, you need to develop much more sophisticated skills, particularly as businesses scale and go outside of Australia. They end up going to the UK or continental Europe, or to the US, which are the big three markets that they go to. So they've then got to learn to actually build a business. And that's really where we come in. Because I've had pretty useful experience. My co-founder also has had plenty of experience. You're really knuckling down to helping people sort out the best organisation structures, find the best people, hire the best people, fire half of them 18 months later when they realise they got them wrong, and hire another, not fire them, but just move people around or let them go and new people come in. But constantly be refreshing, getting the best people, and then putting in place really strong business processes, go-to-market processes, marketing processes, the funnel to move people down through the funnel to get them to the stage where you can convert them into a customer and then turn them into people who are promoting the product. There's a whole range of technical things that have to be done, all to do with business growth and growing. And a lot of founders grow into that. It takes quite a long time for most founders to top out. You think, we start with them, they've got 10 million of revenue. By the time they got to 20 million, you think, they'll be starting sick of managing. And they had 10 million of revenue, they had like 20, 30, 40 people. They got 20 million of revenue, they got 70 or 80 people. And then they got 50 million of revenue, they got 250 people. At some point, most founders decide, I don't want to manage the machine, because businesses just become big conglomerates. You got to manage them every day, and your job is not loving the vision about the product and building the tech, or thinking about product market fit, how the market's changing. You need to adapt the product. That's what founders love, but it's not about that. Chief executive of a big company, you're actually managing the beast on a daily, and I know this from Fairfax days. On a daily basis, you are making sure that everyone is, checking in with all your people running the business on a day-to-day basis, dealing with shareholders, dealing with the market generally, dealing with the need for public releases, thinking about strategy. It's not about doing the job on a daily basis, which is what a lot of people like to do. So often founders at that point will step aside and they'll say, look, I want to stay with the business, but I want to be the product market fit guru, the person who is helping the company adapt and move in the right direction as markets move very quickly in technology space. And they're great at that, and that's great. And so you bring in someone who's much more professional and understands how to run a big company.
Thank you very much. So we've talked around the place a few, different facets of management and leadership, from the day-to-day to leading with authenticity and cultivating ambition. Reflecting on sort of, all the stages of your life, from medicine to the All Blacks to business to now investment, what do you think is the most important leadership lesson that applies sort of across the board, or that you've sort of taken from this journey?
I don't know if it's a leadership lesson, but I would say that probably the thing I'm most proud of, and I guess that there is a leadership role involved, because you're a parent, is actually in when is it, 4 days? No, 10 days. I'll be married 36 years to the same person, which is, for me, is great, and it's worked out well, and it doesn't always work out well, but for no one's fault. But being able to manage a family life, and I've got 3 children, and they're sort of 34 and 32 and 30, and all off around the world doing various things. To be able to manage that family life and stay present in my children's lives through those most important years of 12 to 18 sort of thing, or something like that. Being there, being part of their lives and everything, while still being very busy with a busy job and travelling and so on. And obviously you can't, my wife has picked up much more of the hard work in that regard than I have. But that's the thing I'm most proud of, because in the end, you pass on to the world when you die the people you leave in it. And those are your children. And if you're passing on to the world children who are caring and motivated and ambitious and getting on with their lives in a way which is meaningful for them and for other people around them, then I think that's probably the greatest legacy you can leave.
Thanks for that, David. Look, thank you so much for all that. I know that your advice is always so authentic, but so useful at the same time. And I really appreciate that. And I'm sure everybody else here has really appreciated that as well. I'll take this opportunity to throw it to the floor. Do we have any questions from the crowd that anybody would like to ask David? Yes. Do you have a microphone or just?
That was a wonderful Q&A, and Tara, I think your questions were amazing, especially when David spoke about authenticity. And my question is, sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions about authenticity. And being a neuro-mindset coach, my work is quite around authenticity. And I found that, there was a time, well, this is a tricky topic, a disclaimer everyone. I know there's more of business conversations here and, golf on a sunny day. But this is about what is authenticity? So what I believe authenticity is about being true to who you are or what your values are. So this is a time when someone looked at my dating profile and she said, babe, your dating profile is not authentic. And I said, why not? And she goes, well, you've not said everything about yourself, or some aspects. And I believe is that if you are a person who values diplomacy or being diplomatic, that's what authenticity is. It's not about being everything to everyone, right? So I'd really love to get your perspective on what is authenticity and how do you live your authentic life?
Okay, I'm sort of pretty basic on this stuff. It's just like, being yourself. So what I'm more interested in is, so not trying to behave in a way like that I'm the chief executive, people need to see me as an important person, just being yourself, being who you are. And so the important thing I tried to link that to was your previous experiences make you who you are. You're not the same person all the way through your life. You learn and grow and change and develop. So being authentic is actually being authentic to who you are now, who you are as a person. And often that is grounded in the roots of where you came from and who you are, and whether it's, and the experiences that you have along the way change you and give you more grounds to be a new, different, authentic person.
Thanks, Dave. I wouldn't mind. I'm just wondering a little bit less about business and all that sort of stuff. You mentioned teams go through eras these days, and I was wondering what would be your thoughts on how you would fix the current Wallabies 20-year era?
Well, I think it's not easy actually, because some good people have tried. The main problems that the Wallabies have got at the moment is just not enough talent at that top level. And we saw it during this season. They played really well in South Africa and they won the first game incredibly, and then lost the second game. But played well against the Lions. But it was a very long year. And by the time we got to the end of the year and there were injuries and players that weren't available, they just couldn't do it. So more talent is really important. And that means pathways from schools. So getting more talent coming through the school pathways, which is very difficult. It's very competitive in Australia, and rugby league's got more money, and rugby league throws a lot more money at young people to get them into their pathways, and leaves a lot of them on the scrap heap, by the way. And that's the same from with New Zealand players. New Zealand schools, they have a lot of rugby league scouts go over there, and there's really not much money available for kids straight out of school. There might be a few $1,000s to help them along the way, but a rugby league scout might come across and offer them $10,000 or $15,000, $20,000 or something to go into one of the club's development pathways or something. But 2 or 3 years later, 70%, 80% of the kids that go in those pathways are just finished. There's no role for them, and they've often missed out on their last years of schooling. They try to get them around about 16 to come to Australia if they really like them. So I think there's a huge competitive challenge to actually get the best players into rugby union. And then I think New Zealand and Australia share a challenge of having a competition now, the Sanzar competition, that one level below Test match competition, which isn't as strong as the other parts of the world. So the French top 14, the English Premier League, the other teams that play in Europe, they play in better non-Test match competitions. And so That's another challenge, getting the players, young players particularly, who are still in Australia, playing in good competitions. There's nothing wrong with Australian coaches. Australian coaches are good. You can get best coaches in the world. It's just that actual raw talent and keeping that raw talent together, playing over a period of time. And these days you need much bigger squads than you used to need because you play all your reserves and there are more injuries. It's a much more confrontational game than it used to be. So you need to be carrying squads of like 40 or 45. And probably Australia tops out at 20 players who are actually strong enough to play top level test match rugby.
First of all, thank you for sharing your experience. It's clearly a very accomplished career. The question I have for you is, a career like that, you would have faced many challenges. Can you share a significant challenge that you had over that career, how you identified the challenge, and then how you navigated your way through it and what the outcome was?
Okay, you can sort of divide the challenges into sort of personal, ethical, moral, political, all of those emotional challenges, and like business challenges, like here was a difficult business problem, how did you solve it? Are you which one are you particularly interested in?
I go with the business.
The business one, yeah, okay. Well, when I joined Fairfax Media back in 2005-06, it was just at the beginning. We take it all for granted now, 20 years later, but just at the beginning of the transition from digital media to from newspapers. So basically, in 2005, I think it was, Fairfax had a record earnings, and so and it was all came from classified advertising and the major newspapers and the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age. Do you remember that huge section of property advertising that used to be a separate lift out in the Sydney Morning Herald on the weekends? That was just gold. That was genuinely rivers of gold. You're talking about 80% EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax and depreciation, and more or less all of that's dropping to the bottom line. So all of those, all of that income and all of that revenue was disappearing, was beginning to disappear because Seek and car sales and realestate.com.au were up and running, and Fairfax wasn't part of any of it. So I joined the company at exactly that time. So we really accelerated our investment in not only digital online content, so putting the mastheads online and opening new online news services in Brisbane where we didn't have a newspaper, and in Western Australia. So we had a national advertising network, digital network, which we could take to advertisers. So that was one side of it. But the big challenge was hanging on to the classified advertising, and it was very difficult to do in Australia. But in New Zealand, that hadn't yet played out, and we owned all the newspapers in New Zealand. But there was a company called Trade Me, which was a pretty small company at the time, had about $20 million worth of $25 million worth of revenue and $20 million worth of earnings. These massive, very high margins. And so I went over there and met with the owners of that and talked to them about it. And they said they'd sell, but they'd only sell for $700 million, and they only had $20 million of revenue, $25 million of revenue. So my challenge was the first challenge was to understand the problem. Second challenge was to engage in someone who could help solve the problem and sell their business to us. And the third stage was to convince the board of Fairfax Media that it made sense to pay $700 million for a small company that was making $20 million. And so that was a matter of just working through the logic and having to be absolutely committed and just putting a job on the line almost with the board. I'd only been there for 4 months when I took it to the board, saying you have to do this. If you want me to be the chief executive, if you want me to lead our digital, positioning us in the digital world, we have to make this acquisition. So I sort of gave them a bit of a sort of an ultimatum, but it wasn't really. But they, good for them. I don't think they understood it completely, but they supported their chief executive and they made the decision. So I think the learnings out of that are do all the homework, be highly confident in yourself, and then sell it. Actually really believe in it. go in there and be prepared to take the risk, be prepared to put your career on the line by selling it hard.
And sorry, what was the result of that purchase? What was the outcome? Was it a success?
Yes, it was. Trade Me delivered about 300 over the next, I think they held it onto the business for about, because I wasn't with Fairfax, I came back to be chairman of it actually when they listed it. But it was listed for about 3 billion, I think, and they'd taken about 300 or 400 million of dividends out over the period. So the 3 billion would include the dividends. And it's gone on to it was subsequently privatised for even more. So yeah, it was gone on to be a hugely successful company.
Thank you.
Amazing, actually. My name is Andre. Thanks for coming along. I've been enjoying hearing you, talk about your experiences. My question is a little more around AI. We've created an Uber for trucks in Australia technology, which hasn't launched yet, but it's on the way. And we've experienced, over the last 12 months in compared to the last, 24 months before that, a huge surge in our productivity, where, we're probably working 1,300 to 1,500% quicker in terms of production. We're probably saving around 1,300% as well, per month. I remember we used to do reviews on our technology every 2 weeks. Now we've got it down to every night. Like every night there's a new, revision on that. Obviously with that comes, a lot less people you might need because the AI is taking that position. So my question is, how do you encourage and empower people who have been studying in university for 5, 6, 7 years, graduate, come to a world, where they want to start an internship or try to find a job, and they find themselves struggling because everything they studied for, all of a sudden, is being replaced by AI, UX, UI. How do we encourage the future kids?
It's a really, really good question, and we're only at the beginning of it, but it's a big problem. It's a big challenge coming to us. I mean, I think the right answer, but it's just the blunt answer, is people have to adapt. You have to adapt. There's no choice. I've reinvented, we'll call it reinventing, I'm the same person, but I've focused in different areas during my working career. My working career, I started as a consultant in London, and I worked for the Prime Minister, and then I worked in the oil and gas industry, then I worked in the pulp and paper industry, then I worked in the printing and media services business, then I worked in the media business, then I was the executive chairman of Hoyt's Media, of the Hoyt's Cinema and Media Group, and then I started my own fund. So I've done a lot of zigs and zags. The continuity, though, in that has always been sort of general management leadership capability. I haven't been a specialist in any particular area that could be sort of taken away by AI, for instance. I see some developers are just not needed when AI can do it. So I think that there's always going to be the need for people who engage with people on an interpersonal basis. I just think people need to adapt and learn and don't think about, and I've never thought about my medical career as wasted. I had 6 years as training to be a doctor, and then I had 2 years working as an intern in a hospital, as a house surgeon in a hospital. I learned so many things through those things, which I think are I enjoy thinking back about the time, and I think it's helped make me who I am today. So people should never feel downcast about the fact that their specific set of tools now is not that applicable. Just learn something more. Be a learning, curious, growing person, and you'll find something. You'll probably find something you enjoy more than writing code, which wouldn't be that hard for some people.
Dave, I've got a quick question for you. 2 parts to my question. What is your investment philosophy, strategy, or thinking about investing? Like, how do you do it? What's your strategy? And the second part of my question is very practical. If you had $100,000, $1 million, or $2 million, how would you get invested? For maximum return. Okay.
Well, on the first one, are you talking about the Baylor Law and our investment philosophy, or my personal philosophy? Well, Baylor Law's investment philosophy is very clear, and we have clear to all of our the people who put money in the fund. We invest in growth stage information technology companies where they sort of de-risk their product market fit. They've got a product, it's working, they're growing fast, they've got 10 million of revenue or something like that. They need more money and they need help to scale the business. So we're basically doubling down on what they're already doing and helping them as they grow through the next stages. So that's pretty clear for us, but we're looking for good return on that incremental invested capital, which means to say that their growth economics need to be strong. Every time they hire a new person in a new market to make sales, they make sales and give a good return on what it costs to hire that new person. So we're talking about that incremental investment and incremental return on that investment. That's what we really focus on. That's our philosophy of growth, and that's what fundamentally delivers good returns. Look, if I had money to invest today, I'd be cautious of putting it into the fastest growing things in the world. Because I've got a lot of exposure to that anyway through the fund. But I don't know. I mean, no one can ever go wrong investing the way that Warren Buffett tells people to invest. Invest in things that you know. Invest in things that deliver good cash returns. And if they can reinvest those things in the business and grow the business faster, then that's great. Keep it, or buy back the shares, or give you the dividends. So just fundamental good businesses that have got moats, got good franchises that are growing well and are appropriately valued. And they're hard to find, appropriately valued businesses, but his philosophy of focusing on good businesses that have moats and are well, and you can buy for a fair price, I think is a good one.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. That's been amazing. And you want to say anything, Carl?
No, just to thank
Thanks,
David.
Tara.